Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Chelsey Lauren on the podcast, or Lauren, I should say, on the podcast. She's a physique competitor coming to us all the way from Dallas, Texas, but most importantly, she's our current guest. Chelsey, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get into shape and, get to become a bodybuilder?
Sure. So I started working out actually through yoga when I was maybe 16 or 17. When I was young, I experienced a trauma that just kind of created some like serious control issues for me. And that originally manifested as eating disorders. So I got to a point in my life during high school where I really wanted to get healthy. And like I said, kind of started with yoga. And then from there, I was like, okay, I can learn and grow and improve by doing this consistently. What else can I try and learn and improve and grow? So I started lifting weights. And since I am 4'10", like I don't have far to move the bar. Like I can get pretty strong pretty fast. I can look big pretty easier than, someone who's 6'3". So,
Unfortunately, that is true.
right. I have a little bit of an advantage and
Yeah.
I'm not even mad about it.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
uh, yeah. So, yeah, my love for fitness just kind of evolved into bodybuilding. I fell in love with like kind of that control that I do have over my body. Like I can make it bigger, I can shred down and get smaller, I can reshape it. And that's super empowering.
Yep. I mean, and that's so great. I mean, I always say, like, talking a little bit about the height thing too. I mean, 6'3", yeah, you have a little bit more of body to kind of work with and kind of grow. So yeah, I always say, especially when we have some of our shorter guests on here, it's like there are some advantages too. I mean, I always love to tell the story of like when I had a friend who was really, she was short too as well, and when we started going to the gym, just seeing how the differences were of like how she'd like be doing pull-ups on like the squat bars or whatever like that, where I'd be like, okay, that's just hilarious. So I like, it's just how other people are able to adapt to the gym. But yeah, everyone has their own difficulties when it comes to working out, and that leads me into my next question. If you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape. I mean, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, I mean, so many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that hard for you when you were getting started to sort of figure out what worked best for you? Because I always say, if you were to walk up to someone and say, "What did you train for this body part? It looks amazing." What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
So true. Oh my God. And I wish people understood, that that's also why like these pretty packaged programs that you buy from Sally down the street are just a terrible idea. But yeah, I mean, it takes time to figure out not only what works for your body, but what works for your lifestyle. Like, is it sustainable for you as far as the time that you have, as far as your financial situation, all of that? So for me, I mean, I've done everything. I've done hardcore keto. I've done Whole 30. I was vegan for about 2 years. So I've done. I mean, if if it's a thing, I've done it. So it took me a long time to land on um, where I'm at now, which is pretty simple, like 40% carbs, 40% protein, and 20% fat as far as my caloric breakdown.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that you said that you've been on all these other things because, yeah, like you said too, all these programs that people are giving out, it's like they're built for maybe that person, and maybe not even that person. Maybe they're just built because they want to just make money or whatever. But it's just so much of just finding out what works best for you. And I always like to say, it's like being like a mad scientist, and coming up with your own concoction, just figuring out what's really working for you, and that can be a huge struggle for a lot of people because I always like to say, I mean, especially with the young generation, where I mean, everyone wants it now and they want it yesterday, where they're not able to, put in that work and just realize that it is such a time process. Because I always like to make the comparison between being an alcoholic and being someone, who's trying to get into shape. An alcoholic, if they go one day without drinking, I mean, that's already like significant progress for them. Whereas if you go one day working out and you look in the mirror, you're not going to see any changes at all. You're just going to be like, oh, well, I wasted an hour at the gym, really. Is that what a lot of people would then think then? But it's like, it's working out is one of those things where it's going to take a while for you to start to see like really significant changes. But once you do, I mean, it is just so addictive. But I always love to ask this next question because, everyone's genetics are different, so it always makes for an interesting answer. But when you were getting started, what is one body part that really took off for you that you really didn't have to train as much? And then what is one body part that, just lagged behind and that you had to just train to overdrive? I'll give you my examples first. I mean, my back, I for some reason, I don't know why. I mean, my back is just super, super huge. One thing that looks like I can compete is my back. But also for my least favorite, 6'3", my legs. I'm just so it's just that I'm just too tall. Where it's just my legs are just because and I was a pitcher in high school and in baseball, so I just had that lengthy body where you just got to be super skinny, or not skinny, but you just got to you're not really that muscular. So yeah, my legs have just been a pain to develop. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
That's so funny. Like my legs come in so easy. Probably because I'm 4 foot
Yeah.
10, like my legs are, this
Hmm.
long. So my quads grow like crazy. I have to work a little bit harder for my hamstrings, but yeah, legs in general, calves. I've got that. Um, the hardest thing for me is my chest and my shoulders. So I train shoulders usually 3 times a week. And I've built nice shoulders. So it's funny because people see me in the gym and give me shit about always training shoulders. Like, there's a reason
Hmm.
for that because I have to fight so hard to keep these things.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, and I always say calves are my least favorite out of anything just because that is the number one, like, most genetically thing where, 99% of the people that have good calves, it's like, no, they don't train them as much. And it's just, you see someone with nice calves walking in the gym and you're like, oh my God, I hate you. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God. I don't have calf envy or anything like that. Anyone. I'm not like Johnny Drama from Entourage, but it's like, but it's like, come on, people. But what was your first experience like with bodybuilding? Were you aware of it before you started getting into shape, or was it something where once you started getting into shape, you're like, oh, what's this thing? And how long before you realized like, hey, this is something that I might want to do?
So it was like a totally random thing. My mom is in a multi level marketing, like health and fitness business. And she dragged me to a meeting, and I was like, okay, I'll go to this thing. And there was this girl who got drugged by her mom to the same meeting. This girl, her name's Jennifer Sadia. She's an IFBB pro women's bodybuilder. And I saw her like, across the room, and it was one of those like stars in the background, like, you can hear angel music going on. Like, she is amazing. Like, what does she do? How did she get like that? I'd never seen anybody like that, and it just blew my mind. And I was like, "That's a thing." Like, you see men who are jacked. I had never seen a woman that looked like that before, and I thought that was the most incredible thing ever. So I started to just kind of look into the sport. And you're gonna laugh at this, but I originally really wanted to do bikini. I was like, "They're so cute. They have the best poses." I even prepped for bikini, and my coach kept telling me like, you don't quite have that frame going on. And I was like, no, I can do bikini. um, didn't work out for me. So yeah, eventually I landed in physique, really because I just, how I love to eat and how I love to lift. uh, that's kind of the frame that I built over the course of several years. And now I'm just absolutely in love with it.
And plus, you got to pose in your heels too if you're in bikini. It's like, come on.
True, right?
It's like, come on. It's like, I always say it for any of my guests that are either bikini or figure. It's like you're making it harder on yourself. It's like let's be honest. You got to make it a little bit easier. But I always love to ask my guests, what is that first prep like for you? I know that you were prepping for bikini, but just a lot of people just still don't realize that to be able to get into shape, to be able to go onto a prep, just takes so much hard work and determination, dedication that a lot of people just aren't able to get that. But then going into a prep, that is notching things up to just a whole extreme. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so my first like real prep for bikini, I used to work for a police department, and I was working the graveyard shift. So I was working overnight. We were always short staffed. So I was routinely working 12 to 14-hour shifts. Um, like I said, overnight. So I'd get off work, do all my cardio. And since I was trying to do bikini, I was living on cardio, because I was trying to get, as small as possible. And my body was like, no, thanks. So I was living on the stair climber. And uh, really, like, the diet side of it, I think was easier on graveyard because I didn't have any options. Nothing's open. It was in a really small town. So I had the food that I brought with me, and that was it. I mean, like, people would bring in their cookies and stuff, but for the most part, by the time I got to work at 7 or 9 p.m., it was all stale. So that wasn't too tempting. So I think the diet side of it was almost easier. But I remember one time just like on the stairs, I'm sure people thought I was absolutely ridiculous. I was bawling. Like I have on my hoodie and I'm just walking the stairs crying because I was so tired. I had worked 14 hours, go straight to the gym. Like my makeup is melted off my face. I just have like zero gas left in the tank. And I had, I think, an hour and 20 minutes cardio that day. Um, so that part of it was brutal. I've always loved working out. And it was sad to me to get to a point where I didn't want to go to the gym because I was so tired.
People just don't realize just all that hard work. And how has that evolved though? Like, how has your preps gotten easier? I mean, obviously, hopefully you're not crying on a Stairmaster or on the treadmill as much as you were on the first prep, but how has your prep evolved?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So I think just like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. I am terrible at dieting. Nobody will outwork me in the gym. Like I will cry on the stairmaster, but I'm gonna get it done. Nobody will outwork me. I won't let it happen, especially during a prep. But like somebody's fat Aunt Judy could out diet me easy. Like I'm terrible. I don't experience hangry. I experience like disaster. I just like fall apart when I get to that point. But the more you diet, the better you get at kind of turning that off, and just pushing through it. So I think I've gotten better at that. And since I switched to a division that just fits what I love about fitness, which is the heavy lifting, the high intensity workouts, a ton of food in the off season. Um, since it just suits me better, it's so much more enjoyable. So I've gotten better at it and I love it more.
I have to say the one negative though about what I've heard from you though about physique though is the fact that you have to be super lean though when you go on even more lean than you had to be when you're in bikini figures. So it's like, oh well, she's gonna have to do even more cardio and she's gonna have to do a little bit more of that. But that's just one thing that I never realized too, because when people do think about physique, they just think about like the really big girls that it's like, but no, you have to be like super lean as well. You can't just show up like in an off season look where you're just like where you're just really big. I mean, it's you still have to put in just so much work, and that's one thing that even I learned as I was doing this podcast that I didn't really know that much. So I mean, again, there's just so many things that I've learned through this, but one of the things that I love the most that I've learned, I mean, probably the number one thing that just absolutely shocked me is that for so many of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing. I mean, it's harder than your dieting, it's harder than your working out. I mean, we've heard so many stories about how people just struggle with that so much. And I always like to compare it to, I mean, you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver, you can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always something that's ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like, and has it gotten easier for you as time's gone on?
So I actually love posing. Dancing is in my blood. Both of my grandmas were dancers. I grew up dancing. Um, I modeled full time from the time I was 6 till I was 14. Then it turns out 4'10" is too short for that.
I was gonna say I was like runway models.
So it was
Yeah.
a short lived
Hmm.
dream. But yeah, so I was always like really aware of angles and how to present yourself in the most flattering way. And then dance taught me how to be graceful on stage. Um, I'm an Aries, so I'm all about attention. So you put me on a stage and I just turn on. So that's actually probably my favorite part about physique is I get to do a whole routine and you get to just like show your personality and take the time to make the judges look at what you want to show them. Um, I love.
I was gonna say I'm a Cancer, so when you're talking about crying on the treadmill or on the stairmaster, I was like, I feel you. I feel no, I'm just but yeah, and that's just so awesome that you really enjoy that because I mean we've heard so many horror stories about people who are like, oh my god, I just hate it, like, but it's one of the things that I need to do. But yeah, I always say posing, yeah, it's like it can be so much fun. I mean, it's just really it depends on the person. But out of the physique poses, what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose to do?
Oh, My favorite is definitely just like front double by,
Hmm.
because it's just boom.
Yep.
And since my arms are so short, that's always the first thing I get is your arms are crazy, and it's like they look like it. Tricked ya.
Again, as a guy that has really long arms, I mean, it's just I always see that and I was like, okay, this is bullshit. Like this is
Yeah,
come on,
my
yeah.
bicep is like this long, so um, so I that's a strong pose for
Mhm.
me. Worst is ab thigh.
Yep.
That's just an awkward one. I don't feel like there's no way to make that look cute.
Yeah. I mean, we hear that all the time, and I say that too. I was like, that's just one of those poses where you look at that and it's like, well, why? I mean, it's like you could do it a little bit differently where you're not having them look like they're just crunched over and like the yeah, I don't know what they could do about that, but yeah, that's one of those two where I just look at that and I'm like, okay, really? That's just that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, so many people just with all the posing too. I mean, we hear of that. Was it ever a shock for you though too? For a lot of probably the biggest shocking aspect I should say though is that for so many people they didn't realize that just being able just doing your posing routine for a lot of people, I mean, you're going to sweat more than you sweat even when you worked out. Was that a struggle for you at all though?
Yeah, my first time doing posing practice, I was I had already competed, or no. Anyways, the first time I went to a posing practice with a coach and like a team, it like I was dripping sweat by the end of it. Everything felt like it was cramping. It was an hour, I think, and you just kind of run through, run through, run through. Yeah, it's hard work. It's super fun, but hard work.
Yeah, that's one of those things too where I never realized that too. I was like, really, that's more of a workout, but yeah, people just don't realize because you're flexing everything, and I mean, you just I mean, that's and people have like there's actually been studies that I've looked up that have proven that if but flexing stuff, I mean, it really does actually help the muscle grow because it's almost like working out. So yeah, I mean, that's just a huge thing that a lot of people just don't realize. It's just how much work that really takes, and with the muscle, just and that's why I always say like if you see any of these people like flexing in the gym or whatever like that, it's like no, they're not being really, really vain. They're actually kind of, just working on perfecting their art. I mean, I know I've been to the gym sometimes and I see these guys before I really knew about bodybuilding, I saw these guys, like flexing all the time in between
Yeah.
sets. And I was like, geez, what tools or whatever like that. But then I was like, oh no, they're actually bodybuilders. So like, yeah, they're actually working towards a goal. But now one of my favorite questions to ask, and it's, I mean, because just looking at me, I mean, I am one of the palest people you'll ever meet in your entire life, being from the upper Midwest too, where we're not going to get, that much sun, especially during the winter. What is that feeling like for you when you get to put that tan on and, show off all that muscle? Because we hear so many stories about, like people, you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that experience like for you when you put that tan on?
I love show day. I mean, you have to like live for show day to be a bodybuilder because everything leading up to it is just miserable. But show day, like hopefully at that point that you've done everything you can do. So it's kind of like you get your hair and your makeup done. They slap the tan on you. You see like your final package, and that's what it's all about. Like that is the most exciting thing. That is like the performance. That's the best.
What is that feeling like though too then to finally like see everything really pop out to and to see I mean we have so many people that say that like you have muscles that you never even knew that you had. What is that feeling like just to see that you're kind of turning into like a whole different person?
It's super empowering. Again, just to see like I built this. I couldn't buy this. Nobody can say that somebody gave it to me. It's undeniably something that you worked your ass off for. And to be able to show that and see it, better than you've ever seen it before is so cool.
And that's just so amazing. And again, just making me jealous because I've never been tan a day in my life. I'll either get like a farmer's tan, where let's be honest, that's not a real tan, or I just get burnt to an absolute crisp. So yeah, that's definitely the thing that I look at, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's if only one day I could ever be like that naturally tan or whatever. But yeah, I keep waiting for that day to happen. But I honestly think that it's coming past and that it will never come to be. But now, probably the question that I ask all my guests, whether it be my up and coming musicians or my health and fitness guests. I mean, for my bands, I always ask, what is that feeling like for you when you get to go on stage and perform in front of like hundreds to thousands of people? And I also like to ask that to my bodybuilders because what is that feeling like for you when you get to step on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months for?
hmm Again, like one, just my personality. I love look at me, look what I did. But also, like, going back to when I fell in love with bodybuilding, seeing Jennifer and just thinking, like, how incredible that a woman not only has that kind of work ethic and that kind of drive and that kind of commitment, because you know that that takes years of consistency, but also like the strength to defy society standards for what a woman should look like and just do her own thing. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, that I mean, and that too for me, because like people just don't realize. I mean, especially for women, all of the extra hard work that they have to put into it. Because for guys, I mean, let's face it, guys, we can finally admit it. I mean, with the testosterone that we have, I mean, we would not have to work out as much as the ladies would to in order to get that look down. I mean, I know, unfortunately, I mean, let's be honest. You said that there's things that you like about being short. Well, then there's things I also like being about being a guy. Then when it comes to working out, then so it evens itself out pretty. I mean, it still might even be more tipped into my favor, but I mean, I always say, just the hard work, especially for the women, and that too, because I mean, I love having, especially the female bodybuilders come on because a lot of people when they walk down the street and they were to see you or see another bodybuilder, they're not able to look past the muscle and realize that like there's just a human being deep down there with just their own story. And I mean, a lot of people just aren't able to look past that. So that's why I love to have them come on and share their stories so that people can just realize like, hey, there's an average person just like me and you, but they may just have like you said, the best dedication in the world. They might have better dedication than I will ever have when it comes to anything, just because a lot of people just don't realize what it's like to go onto those shows. But yeah, I mean, and that's just so awesome. But when you are on stage and when you are, posing, does the time really seem to fly by? Because one of the things that I talk to my bands about when I tell my bands that, like, yeah, I also have, sometimes bodybuilders come on. Some of these bands, they're on for, hours upon hours for a show, but you guys are on there for sometimes a minute at the most. I mean, does that minute go by really, really quickly, or do you try to make it last as long as possible?
I feel like when we do your lineup, that always feels way too fast. I try to always be like the last person to like, transition when they have us run through the poses. Um, that part always goes, it's like, oh, we're done. Okay. Next group. The posing routine, I don't get too nervous. Because I just love it. But at the same time, when you're up there, it's like I'm still, oh, my song is still going, and it just feels like everything's in slow motion.
Yep.
And then, just like anything that you look forward to for so long, once it's done, it's like, what? That's
What do I do now with my life?
yeah.
I always tell people, it's like, find that one thing in your life that you really brings you that much joy and happiness, and just stick with it. I mean, we're on this planet for such a short amount of time that I mean, it's really just a sin to not really find that one thing and really stick with it. I mean, I couldn't say that enough. And if there's one message throughout this podcast, it would be that. But now we go to one of the myths that I love to bust. And again, it's gotten so much better with Instagram the last 5 years. But I ask this for every single bodybuilder guest because I mean, if one person just watches any of these podcasts, hopefully then that they'd be able to find that this myth is busted. But there's so many women now that still have that fear that if they walk into the gym and if they pick up one weight, they're still going to hulk out and, put on 50 pounds of muscle. And I always say that, you'll become the first ever trillionaire. I mean, there'd be such a high popular demand of people to find out, like what you did. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, what do you like to say to that? Because I bet you still hear that all the time.
Yeah. So first of all, if you find that girl that can just
Mm-hmm.
walk in and turn into a Hulk, you let me know because
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to her. But yeah, I did have that fear again, like switching from yoga, where the focus is like to lengthen and like stretch everything. Um, and then lifting weights, it was kind of like, well, I'm already short. I don't want to be like a square, be as wide as I am tall. And my mom has a background in fitness, and she kind of has the old school mentality of the little 2 pound rubber dumbbells and stuff like
The
that.
jazzercise kind of thing. Yep.
Yeah, like she's come a long way.
Yeah.
That's not
Mm-hmm.
not a diss at my
Yeah.
mom, but originally that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of, she's the one that taught me. um so I for sure had that fear, and then I figured out it's not that easy. You have to eat a lot and you have to lift a lot consistently over a long period of time. And if we're honest, you have to do some other stuff too. It doesn't happen on accident. um I love, though, the women that are willing to go into the gym and whatever it is, like you want to get faster, you want to, CrossFit, you want to run further. You want to,
CrossFit's a cult, let's be honest.
yeah, totally is.
It's a cult. I've had CrossFit people on here and I was like, okay, when are you guys drinking the Kool-Aid afterwards? Like when's that going to happen? But yeah, I mean, I always say, oh, I'm just going to get into a quick CrossFit tangent because I see some of these ladies that compete in CrossFit. It's like they could do bodybuilding like that day. Like, it's like, I don't know what, I mean, which is those, I'm talking about like the ones that like go to like the CrossFit games or whatever like that. I was like, yeah, they could do bodybuilding the next day. So I was like, why not?
24/7.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, first of all, their abs are like popping out like a foot. Their abs are, their stomach is like a foot longer than anything else. Or it's like popping out like a foot wider, but it's like still like super jacked. And I was like, okay, why? Like why? But I mean, and it's also, I mean, it's like all these, I mean, yeah, it's just ridiculous that I mean, because who would have thought that like those type of workouts would make people look like that? But I was like that, and that's just a really shocking thing. But yeah, like you talk to some of these let's and it's like, yeah, it's a cult. But let's just be complete. It's a healthy cult. I'll leave it at that though, people. It's a healthy cult, so it's a good cult for people like that. But again, if you're a weekend warrior, CrossFit might not be the thing for you. I mean, you'll probably get injured. But yeah, CrossFit, you know, CrossFit, I have positive things to say about it, but I mean, just like everything else too, I mean, it's like, you got to take it with a grain of salt. So yeah, that is my little rant on CrossFit, everyone. Yep. So I mean, like you were talking about, just that myth though. I always love to tell the story too of when I was going to college, you know, getting bigger and stronger. One of my really good friends, she came up to me and said, you know, like, Ryan, I see that you're, you know, getting bigger. I want to go to the gym with you, but I'm just afraid I'm going to get too bulky. And then I told her, I said, listen, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs or when we go out to get something to eat weighs more than 90% of the dumbbells in the gym, and you're not gaining an ounce of muscle from lugging that thing around. I mean, she had, I don't know what she had in that purse, a dead body, something like that. I mean, it was a very heavy purse. Like I had carried a few women's purses up in prior to then, and that thing was, I mean, my mom's purse was probably about a tenth of the weight that thing was. So I don't know what she had in that, but yeah, it was one of those things where once she was like, oh yeah, I mean, you know, she went to the gym and she started really, you know, realizing that it's not going to happen overnight. And like you said, you're going to have to do, you know, so many different things when it comes to your diet and your nutrition. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't preach that enough for people on there, but that also leads me into, I mean, one of the things that I love to ask too, because it affects women, I'd say so much more than it does men positively, is the confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, let's face it, some of these guys, you could have like a 400-pound guy who walks into the gym and he acts like he owns the place, and that's just, you know, that's just the way that the guy acts or whatever. But for women, the confidence boost, I always say, is one thing that you can take from the gym and you can really use it to help out every other aspect of your life. How has that confidence boost really helped you in other aspects of your life?
Yeah, again, like, um personally, like, knowing again that I did this thing that nobody can say was given to me, and I clearly didn't just like accidentally happen to have. That's just super empowering to know I can do hard stuff, and I can do it for a long time, and I can do it when it's uncomfortable, and I can do it when I'm tired. So I take that with me every day. Like, I can do anything. Um, and obviously, I wish I could hold on to that mentality like 100% of the time. I won't pretend like I can, but that's improved just my mentality um, hugely. And then on like a surface level, whether, I mean, I get, as a muscular female, um, it's amazing what people will say to you. I've been super skinny, I've been overweight. I have never had as much just straight up body shaming as being muscular. I'll have random people in the grocery store be like, "Ugh, why?" Um, so it's interesting because you get that, but then you also get the respect, whether people think it's gross or they're one of those weird fetish people. Like, you get all kinds of stuff, but everybody
I have to interrupt. That is one thing when I was doing research into this that I was not aware of. And once I started looking into that, I was like, okay, what? Like this? Wait, like what? And I closed my browser immediately, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Not
yeah,
talking about that again. Like that was one of those things where I look up and I was like, oh, really? That's a thing? Like, oh, okay, like,
yeah.
all
If my life
right.
ever goes terribly wrong, I've got a backup.
Yep. Mhm. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, and then like you said, yeah, too, especially with, you know, just I never realized that too as well, just with the negative comments, because I always say it's just so fascinating how women who are trying to better themselves and lose weight and get muscular, for some reason, because I always say you can never, like, especially in today's day and age, you could never really, you know, make fun of a fat person really and get away with it as much as making fun of someone who has muscle, and then just saying, and just because with muscle, I think a lot of people just aren't aware of that, so then they think that, oh yeah, like what is that, or where it's just, yeah, that's just ridiculous, because I've heard so many stories about that too. But then, like you said, there is a little bit of positive too, where it's the respect too that people get, because people that do realize that, I'd say the people that do work out a lot too realize, like, wow, this girl must really, have all that dedication, have that hard work. But now we go into one of the fun questions. What is your go-to post-show meal?
Okay, so the last one was grilled cheese and tomato basil soup. I was so bummed though, dude. Like, I went to this diner and I had pancakes and I had a thing of French fries. I had my grilled cheese and my soup, and I was gonna eat it all. But I was so like I was so conditioned to eating, like, such small amounts of food for the 5, 6 weeks leading up to the show. I couldn't eat it all. I think I was full after like half the sandwich. I was like, ugh, I feel so lame right now. But that was the best grilled cheese I've ever had in my life.
I was gonna say, I, like you, could never like diet and really get down to the shape. Like, I'm one of those people where if I have one day where I don't get the right amount of sleep, like, I'm a bitch. Like, let's be honest. I'm a Mitch. I'm a male bitch, basically. That's what I like to call it. I'm a Mitch. Yeah. So basically, yeah, I could never do that, but I've always wanted to, that would be the one thing that I would love to do, is just because I just couldn't imagine what that must taste like to finally, have something good again. I always say, I would rent out a Five Guys and I'd just walk in with $1,000 and be like, hey, I'm renting you out for the night. 3 things are going to happen. I'm either going to die, I'm going to pass out, or I'm just going to keep throwing up but your guys are going to feed me, either way. So yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. But now probably one of the most important questions that I love to ask, because it's another myth that is not talked about really at all, especially on Instagram, is that, I've had so many guests, or I've had so many friends, I should say, come up to me and say, like, Ryan, I really enjoy watching this podcast. I'm just surprised though. I thought that like these competitors were able to look like that, like 365 days out of the year. It's one of those myths that people don't get, where it's like, you're not going to be able to look like that year round. It's not sustainable. Even for the guys, it's not sustainable. And it's for so many people, that's just a huge shock to them, where they're like, oh my God, like, I didn't realize that, you're not, because a lot of people too, and I thought this too before I really got started here, is that, like, if you work that hard and you have that much dedication, it's like, you should be able to keep that up. It's like, no, your body is, you manipulate your body through all the dieting, through all the working out, into a look that is not sustainable, and it's not healthy. For most people that think that, like, oh, they must be like at their healthiest when they go up on stage. No, they're actually at their most unhealthiest and their weakest. If you were to have like a bench press competition, like at that show or whatever, you'd be shocked about like what the weights that some of these people were putting up. You're like, oh wow, they're actually like kind of weak, like right then. But then, so yeah, it's just so fascinating for me that people don't get that, and that's why I love to ask that on here, because most people don't understand that. But what was that process like for you when you first realized, like, hey, I am not going to be able to keep this shape? It's a look that is, I'm not going to be able to keep. Was that a struggle for you? Because so many people, with all that hard work that it takes just to look like that, was that just a difficulty for you to just adjust to the fact that, like, hey, I am not going to be able to look like this year round?
Big time. I personally, like, we talked earlier about, you kind of find what works for you. And this may not be like ideal for most people, but I gain muscle super easy. That means I gain fat super easy. So in my off season, I walk around a solid like 30 pounds heavier. I'm 4'10". I look very different off season. This is full off season. I look very different off season than I do during a prep. And that is important to like be successful at my sport. I have to be comfortable. Like, as a woman, I think it's maybe a little bit harder for us
Oh,
mentally.
absolutely.
Yeah, to like see our bodies change so much, and to be comfortable with both sides. Like, there's a very small window for me personally, at least, where I love how I look. Like, off season, it's just uncomfortable. Um, I still have like moments of when people approach me and ask me like, "What do you do? You're so fit." And it's like, "What? How can you tell I work out?" Like, it just messes with your head.
Yeah.
And then you get to a point in prep where you're like, your skin is thin and you're vascular, and it just like, you don't look cute anymore. Your face is sunken in. You look like you're dying. Um, so there's like
I call them Skeletors.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and like that's the goal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's a small window where you actually love how you look overall, like from head to toe. So you have to be pretty like comfortable with seeing your body go through all of this, and that's a whole different type of commitment to the sport.
100%. I mean, I always say too, I mean, it's like, it's a big difference, like you said, between the males and the females. Cause there's some of the guys in here, they're like, I get to eat more now and I get to get fat. It's like, yeah. And then they just got like really pumped about it. Where, yeah, it's like for the girls, I mean, for me personally, I put on, like my 10 to 15 pounds of winter weight. Cause being up in Minnesota where, I mean, during the polar vortex, it got to negative 65 wind chill here. So, I mean,
Oh.
yeah, you're not gonna want to be stage lean, or you're not gonna want to be lean at all when you walk out, and that you're gonna need to put on I put on, like I said, 15 to 20 pounds of fat, every winter just to be able to help survive. And, actually 2 weeks from now is when I start to lean down now. So I'm actually, I'm going to actually have a milkshake tonight for my Friday night, my Friday night snack, just to enjoy it. But yeah, in a couple of weeks, I am going to have to lean down. But yeah, it is one of those things that people just don't realize, that you're not going to be able to keep that look. And it's just like starting a business too. I always like to say, you got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. It's one of those things. And like you said,
Yeah.
too, the one good thing about physique though, too, is that you do get to, bulk up and, put on a little bit more. Whereas if you're in bikini, I mean, you couldn't really put on as much. You could probably put on, like 10, 15 pounds. And then even then you'd be like, oh my God, like I need to, so it's one of those things that a lot of people just don't realize. But I always say to all my guests, it's like, yeah, you still look better than 99% of the females on the planet, even though you might be like you said, 30 pounds more than you were stage weight. But a lot of people just don't realize that. Me personally, like when I started not working out as much as I had in college, because I didn't really have the time to, work out, like 3 or 4 hours a day, like I was able to in college. When I started to get a little bit of fat, and people would still be like, "Oh wow, you look amazing, you look great," I'll be like, "Shut the hell up! Don't lie." It's like, no, I don't. And then once I kind of gained a little bit more perspective, I was like, okay, yeah, I still look better than so many of my friends or so many of the other people. But yeah, it is hard how that messes with you, where you're like, I don't look great. Like, what are you talking about? But then if you actually look at that person, it's like, I look way better than they do though still. So it's just, yeah, it's
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up for your listeners because, again, especially women, like on Instagram, you see some of these competitors and fitness models who are not only dishonest about how they get their results, but they're honest about how they look. Like they reuse the same photos, taken within a 2 week
mm-hmm.
frame.
I
And
I counted one person that I've asked to come on, and they've kept kind of like blowing it off, but I counted one time they have used the same photo 13 different times. 13 different times. And I was like, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to call people up, but it's like, come on, people. It's like, let's be honest, So I cannot appreciate you even more for saying that, because there's so many people where they're like, yeah, I got to weigh this. And I was like, let's be honest. You did stuff to look like that. I mean, it's like, it's like, you don't have like 21-inch arms or whatever like that. Just be like, oh yeah, I just ate my vegetables and I just ate it's like, come on. So
mhm.
you got to be a little bit more honest about that with people. And that's why I love, having that as well. But it honestly, yeah, it's one of those things too, where they don't realize, because like you were talking about Instagram, you will see their contest photos or their lean photos, all throughout the year. And then because they just, well, I mean, and I get that too, like the competitor aspect where you don't want to like show yourself when you're like super, super off season, especially if that's like your entire brand, where it's like you need to look like you're in shape. Because if you look like, you're like 50 pounds overweight, and then you're like, buy my fitness stuff, like I know what I'm doing. It's like, look at me. And then people are like, what? Like, you don't look like you're in that great a shape or whatever. So yeah, it's not saying that people that don't look in shape, but I'm just saying with the whole body dysmorphia, how you think then that you don't look like you're in shape. But yeah, so again, like I cannot appreciate you enough for saying that as well. And yeah, I love to bring that up, because especially for women, I mean, the amount of body issues that women have to go through without even getting into this sport, I mean, is just I mean, it's one of those eye-opening things that really, just talking to all these women on this podcast has really helped me understand. But just, yeah, just anything that I can do to help out people and just realize that, like, hey, this is actually what it's like. I mean, I am more than willing to do that. But now, two of my favorite questions that I love to ask, every bodybuilder and health and fitness guest that I have on the podcast. I mean, for me personally, when I was starting to, work out and get bigger and stronger, there's so many positive things that were associated with that. But the one negative thing for me is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next couple of months before I move out. And every time they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and then carry the groceries in. Has that been a similar experience with you, where people take one look at you, and I mean, even though I know you're 4'10", they just still assume that you can like do favors for them? Now, obviously, they're not asking you to like lift, or they're not asking you to like get like the top shelf stuff at the grocery store, but I mean, other stuff like that. Are they still asking you to like do favors for them?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so disappointing. Like my arms are so short. Like I can deadlift
Yeah.
the box. I can't get my arms around
Mm-hmm.
that bitch. So I'm not a whole lot of help all the time. I get asked to flex a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. Yeah. So the one thing too with me too is honestly, like when I was at bars too, especially when I'd go sleeveless, just these drunk girls would always come up and they'd feel my arms without like even asking. They just like come up, they'd be like, "Oh my God, Becky, come check this guy out," or whatever like that. I was like, "Oh yeah, that's just a thing." But let's be honest, I was really vain back then, so I'd pump it up for them a little bit, and just be like, "Yeah, yeah, check it out." But yeah, that's one thing too, and getting asked to arm wrestle like all the time too. That's one thing that I really was not prepared for. But I even told
Mhm.
them, I was like, okay, if we're really gonna like test like a measure of strength, let's just go to a gym and like have like a military press off or something like that, then as opposed to like arm wrestling, because it's like it's one of those things that really comes with the territory. But like I always say, being 6'3", it's a double edged sword where I could have zero muscle at all, and I remember having zero muscle at all even in high school. Oh yeah, tall guy can get it because I was 6'3" in my freshman year of high school. I'd stopped growing by then, so I was tall guy can do it. Tall guy can do it. Blah the scars and the emotional and mental scars that I've had from always being asked to do stuff. I mean, even this last summer, all my friends every other weekend would just text or call me and just be like, "Hey Ryan, I'm moving out of my parents' house. You want to come help me move?" And I said, first of all, I don't want to help you do it, but I'll do it. But it's just it's one of those things that you really have to get used to. But now my favorite question that I'll ask any guest that I've had on, when it comes to clothes for fit women, I mean, your clothing options can be very limited. And again, guys have very limited options as well, but women have especially limited options. Like you said, I mean, the one positive thing that you said about, how your shoulders, it takes a little bit longer to develop and it's hard to maintain is that if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time where, I mean, if you have a built lower body and a small waist, jeans are not made for that. So it can be very hard to find things that work for you. But what have been some ways that you have found that sort of help you compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited?
That's such a good question. I'm gonna have to go back through like all your episodes and get
Yeah.
some tips from the other girls
Yep.
too. But I wear a lot of leggings. Like with my job, I'm for the most part like I manage myself, so I can wear leggings and a t-shirt to work. When I need to dress a little bit nicer, my go-to is like the stretchy dresses because it doesn't matter where I'm at in my season. Like I know that's gonna fit. Um, and I layer quite a bit so that, if something's a little tight up here or a little loose when I'm in prep, you can just kind of cover it up with a sweater. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I gotta ask too. I mean, being in Texas, I mean, completely different climate. Is it different for you at all, really, during the summer? Like, how are you able to get your workouts done during the summer? Because let's be honest, 110 degrees up here in Minnesota, like, I would never leave my house. I would just be, I would have, like a cooler right next to me, and I'd fall asleep basically on top of an ice cooler or something like that, just to be able to go to sleep. But how are you able to motivate yourself during the dog days of summer when it can just get so hot down there?
hmm So, I actually just moved to Texas about 7 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I can't say a whole lot about that. I will say, like, I grew up in Hawaii. So, like,
Oh.
super hot and humid is my jam. I love it. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think like 90 degrees is where I'm like most comfortable.
Mhm.
So I don't expect to be too miserable.
What part of Hawaii did you grow up on?
I grew up on Oahu on the west side in a place called Eva Beach.
Yeah. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. I mean, it always looks just so great. And I gotta ask, why did you move out of that tropical paradise?
Yeah, so I moved for college. I went to college in
Um,
California, and while I was there, my family moved to Texas. So I kind of did my own thing. I lived in Washington State for a while, and then just moved back to be closer to them.
I don't mean to insult your family, but why the hell would you want to move to Texas from Hawaii? I mean, it's like you look at
That is
Hawaii
a good
and then you look at a
question.
picture of Texas and you're like, okay, what is wrong with that picture? Like, what is wrong here? Yeah.
I totally agree. We should
Mhm.
call my parents right
Yeah.
now and ask them.
Like, what were you guys think? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, honestly, yeah. That's one of those things where I was like, okay, we might not be dealing with the most sane people here, but it's no. I'm just joking because yeah, people look at Hawaii and they're like, why would anyone want to move? But yeah, I mean, I can understand some reasons why. I mean, these tropical storms, there's other things like that. No place is perfect, but yeah, still, just when I found out that's one thing that we learned too, that she's from Hawaii that I would have never guessed. But now that leads us into our audience favorite, my personal favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire where we're gonna ask Chelsey here about a dozen or so health and fitness questions that we ask all of our guests and just see how our answers stack up to all the other guests that we've had on. So for our first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
Okay, so have you heard of DJ Noise?
Heard
He's
of it.
like an island guy.
Mhm.
He does all these cool remixes. So it's a song called Better Days by DJ Noise, and I keep that on repeat.
I think I've heard that song. It's probably one of those songs where if it was played, like I'd remember it. So I think I'm aware of that. And I mean,
It's super happy and upbeat. I love it.
yeah, which is good because for me, I mean, I got to go with my old school like cheesy '80s music where it's just the cheesier the better. Like I have the Rocky IV
There you go.
soundtrack on my iPod and I listen to like a song of that every time. But I have a problem. So like I have a gym at home, which is nice, where I have, just some basic equipment where I can just get a workout in. But one of the big problems that I have is that I have to wait for the beat to drop when I'm working out. So like I'll be so like 75% of the time I work out at home, but the 25% of the time that I go to a normal gym, let's say like I'm doing like a lat pull down. I've had times where I'm at the gym when people come up to me and be like, "Hey, are you all right? Did you like pull out your back or something?" I'm like, "Nope, just waiting for the beat to drop," because I'll just be like this then for like 30 seconds. So yeah, I am known throughout my gym as the guy that waits for the beat to drop. So I mean, it's a struggle, but it's gotten better as time's gone on. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could work out with any celebrity, who would it be?
Jonah Hill. Like, how cool. Like, he put himself through such an amazing transformation. And you talk about,
Transformations. That guy has gained and lost like 150
right?
pounds like 8
Yeah.
times.
Like, he's so real
Yeah.
about it. And like, how hard to do something like that when you have the whole world watching you. And you even have people like, he's just trying to do what's best for
Mhm.
himself. And he still has people hating on him for like, no, you're supposed to be the funny fat guy. Like that's the kind of people I want to be.
Me and my brothers, I should say, we always have an ongoing bet where whenever we were about to see an upcoming Jonah Hill movie, well, we always put the over under on, is he going to be 300 pounds or is he going to be 150 pounds for this movie? Like we always have that bet where, I mean, but it's just so astonishing to look at him. I mean, just from his first movies, I mean, he has gone through like 5 different phases, but I was like, just what has that done for his body though? I mean, just like gaining and losing all of that weight constantly, because we're talking about like an off season for bodybuilders. An off season for him is gaining like 150 pounds and then trimming it down. And this is like yearly that he's been doing this. Like, what is going on with that? But yeah, that again, he's such a great guy too. That I mean, I've had people who have come on that have actually met him. So I mean, just I've heard good stories about him. So I mean, that's just awesome. And yeah, I think that would be a great guy to work out with as well. But now, if you could train any celebrity on the planet, who would it be?
Oprah.
Oprah. That is a good,
Yeah.
yeah. Get that Oprah money, yeah, from having a little having a little training segment with her on her show. No, but yeah, she would be. I mean, yeah, honestly, she'd be one of those guests where I would just talk to her the entire time. Like we wouldn't get a real workout in because I'd be like, just let me just talk to you, basically. But
I feel like just being around her, you would gain all this wisdom. Just like
oh,
soak it up,
oh yeah, 100%. But now, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
In a mango. I'm obsessed with mango. So like anytime I'm off season, there's mango fit into my diet. Whatever it is, it's gonna include mango.
I have never. Okay, that is our first mango that we've ever heard on this podcast. I mean, I gotta say our 2 most popular answers are chicken and eggs, but that just goes with the territory. But my most surprising answer, one thing that shocked me completely, was that for a lot of these bodybuilders, mustard is their go-to. 0 in
Oh,
calories, 0 in fat, so they put mustard on basically anything. And I always say to that, I mean, it's like if you have to do that, you might want to reevaluate your life. You're having to put mustard on everything, because I'm always. I mean, I was a mustard guy until I was about like 4, and then I switched over to team ketchup. And I always say, I do the same thing though. If ketchup ever came up with something that was like 0 calories, 0 fat, and I know that it's try sugar-free ketchup, it's not the same. It doesn't taste the same. I'm sorry, you'll never get me to buy that. But yeah, so I mean, I couldn't be more surprised by that answer. But yeah, mango too is another just shocking answer. So we have that on the board.
okay.
But now, out of all your followers that you have on Instagram, what would be one thing that they would be surprised to know about you if they met you in person? Other than your height. I'm not going to give you the easy out right there. I'm not going to give you that easy out.
One thing they'd be surprised to know. I can balance a spoon on my nose. That's pretty cool. I wish I had a spoon so I could demonstrate. Um, but no, I'm ambidextrous. So my brother is my oldest brother is left-handed, and I think I'm actually left-handed, but just like grew up being taught to do everything right-handed. So grabbing a golf club or like a baseball bat, it just depends on the day how I grab it.
Okay, so this is shocking because I too am also ambidextrous. So
Oh,
just
hey.
the odds of having another person. Well, I don't I think I'm actually. Well, I'm not. I forgot. There's another. There's like it's not ambidextrous, but there's another term where if you're dominant in like both hands for different things. So
Uh-huh.
I forgot what that is, but like I throw with my right hand, I write with my left hand. I do other. I forgot what it's called. It's not ambidextrous entirely, but like I can do things like with both hands. Now, obviously, like for some things, I'm not going to be as good with the other hand as I am with the other. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
also like that. But yeah, it's also it's fascinating to have other people like that on because I remember as a kid, always just especially being a baseball pitcher, I was like, okay, I learned to write left-handed. Why the hell didn't I learn to throw left-handed? Because I would have had such an advantage being a left-handed pitcher as opposed to being a right-handed pitcher. But yeah, that's definitely fascinating. And I was gonna say, you being from Hawaii too. I mean, I don't think many people would have guessed that too. So that's another just fascinating thing. But now, if someone were to come up to you and say, Chelsey, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Easy. It should be that women aren't judged so much on our hair and makeup. I know like one specific incredible athlete. She just looks amazing. She's built a phenomenal physique. She's really young. I think she's 20 or 21, but she just doesn't wear makeup. Like she's not comfortable with that. She always does her hair like in a ponytail or a braid. Um, and I think it really sucks that she loses points like on presentation because it's expected that she gets herself dolled up. Like that's not what the sport is. I understand the presentation aspect of it, but it's bodybuilding. So you should be comparing a body to a body. It shouldn't be a beauty pageant.
I always say though too with the guys too. I mean, especially the guys just have to wear their little bottom or whatever like that, where the women have to wear like these bikinis and stuff. I mean, it's just so many things where you look at the
Yeah.
guys. I mean, it's like you don't see guys having to walk out with like frosted tips or anything like that just to make it look good, like their presentation. I mean, it's like I could walk out there basically like with this raggedy hair, and as long as my pose is good, I don't think it would affect me nearly as much as it would a woman. So that's what I always like to say too. It's like it's bodybuilding. I mean, it's like if you want to do a beauty pageant, then call it a beauty pageant, but it's not a beauty pageant. So yeah, that's one of those things too where I look at that too and I'm just like, oh my god, yeah, that is absolutely ridiculous. But now we go to the fun part of the questionnaire. So what was the last TV show that you binge watched?
Uh, my 600-pound life. I'm obsessed with that show. That is my guilty pleasure.
I honestly just I've watched a few episodes of the show and I just look at those parents and I was like, just stop feeding them. Problem solved. Stop feeding them. Problem solved. Like it's like come on, people. But yeah, I look at that show too, and I'm just like, some of these people, they just have complete control of their parents, and they're just like, oh, I want like another Coke or whatever. And they're like, oh, hey, this isn't gonna make you like worse or anything like that. Like, oh, so,
Like
yeah.
you don't want to watch it, but you
Yeah.
can't look away.
It's
Yeah.
like watching an accident live. I mean, it's like you can't turn away from it. Like a train wreck or anything like that. It's like you really don't want to, but it's like just human nature where you're just like, I want to see how this ends up. Like I want to see the end result. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean that's another great show too. But now everyone has one. What is a guilty pleasure movie that you enjoy?
Um, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is probably one that I rewatch like way too often because it's hilarious.
Was that the one with Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I get that confused all the time with 10 Things I Hate About You because the titles are somewhat similar, so I always got to make sure that's the thing. But yeah, that's a good one too. I mean, anything with Matthew McConaughey, I really like. I mean, Dazed and Confused is one of my favorite movies of all time. But for me, I mean, all my guy friends, close your ears. Princess Bride will always be my guilty pleasure movie. I mean
Oh,
that movie comes on, I stop what I'm doing and I watch it. So yeah, I'm Princess Bride by far is my guilty pleasure movie. And again, I'll never admit that in person. Any of my guy friends, you'll have to listen to a podcast if you want to get that info. But yeah, Princess Bride. But now I'd like to ask these two final questions of the questioner. So now, if we were to talk to you a year from now, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding career, or where would you like to be at in life?
cool. So I probably won't do another show until either the end of this year or spring of 2020. So a year from now, I hope to have a sword, first place at a show. And in my personal life, right now, so I've been a certified personal trainer for almost 10 years, and I'm always stacking on new certifications and stuff. And I've been preparing for a long time to launch Booty Crew Boot Camp. So that will launch within the next 3 months, and clothing line will be within the next 6 to 9 months. So hopefully, both of those things a year from now will be thriving and growing.
Definitely let me know about that clothing line and about all that other stuff because like we talk about here, fashion is definitely a thing that, needs to be brought into bodybuilding a little bit more where we need to get, like some clothes that fit people and that they really like. So definitely keep you posted on that. And again, we wish you nothing but the best and everyone go and give her a follow on Instagram. Leave all those links down below. But now if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
To not worry so much about what other people are thinking and saying. You're always happier doing what you know in your heart is right and right for you. Um, Nobody else can tell you what that is. So you just got to reach a point with yourself where you can kind of ignore them and do you.
I honestly could not agree with you more on that. And again, you guys go and give her a follow. Highly recommend it. But now, lastly, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to?
Oh yeah. Let me give a shout out to my best friend Kelsey. When I very first started, she was doing stairs with me at 5
Were
a.m.
you guys crying together?
She probably was more like, "You're stupid. Why are you doing this to yourself?" But she was there,
Yeah.
and she made sure I got it done. She's been at my show. Like, she's just number one supporter. She's amazing. And my most recent coach, Tino Robles, in its Power Athletic compound in Richland, Washington, he has built such an amazing community of badass women. And I miss that so much. He's an incredible coach. His wife Ruby is awesome as well, and they're gonna pump out some insane athletes.
And that's awesome. And honestly, I let everyone check that out as well. But again, Chelsey, we cannot thank you enough for being on the podcast. I mean, it was really great to have you come on and share your story. And again, everyone, go and give her a follow. I'll leave all the links down below, and we wish you nothing but the best in all of your future endeavors. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.